Pickup trucks. For over a century, they've been more than just vehicles. They've been symbols of grit, hard work, and freedom. They built highways, carried families, and stood proudly in driveways across America. But today, something is changing. Quietly, right before our eyes, 5 legendary names that once defined affordability and blue-collar identity are slipping away. They're not disappearing overnight, but in a far more subtle way. Prices rising out of reach, entry-level models vanishing, and brand identities shifting so dramatically that the trucks our parents knew barely exist anymore. So the question is, how did we let this happen? Who benefits when once working-class trucks transform into luxury toys? And what does it mean when names that shaped American culture now feel like strangers? Let's start with the brand that has dominated the American road for over a century, Ford. When people think about American trucks, one name towers above the rest: Ford. From the Model T pickup of the early 1900s to the modern F-Series, Ford's story is inseparable from America's story. Henry Ford himself believed in putting everyday people behind the wheel. And for decades, that's exactly what his company did. In the 1920s, Ford pickups carried hay bales across farmland, building materials across towns, and families across rough back roads. They were simple, rugged machines that anyone with a wrench set could maintain. Through the Depression and the Second World War, Ford kept building trucks for the working class. By the 1940s and 50s, they had become a fixture in American life, affordable, dependable, and trusted. The 1970s cemented Ford's dominance with the F-Series already topping sales charts. Boxy, powerful, and affordable, these trucks became part of the cultural fabric. TV commercials showed them powering through mud and gravel, promising toughness and longevity. They weren't just vehicles, they were family legacies. Generations grew up believing that if you needed a truck, you needed a Ford. But then, something changed. As the 2000s rolled in, trucks began transforming. They weren't just tools anymore. They became lifestyle statements. Buyers demanded luxury, leather interiors, giant infotainment screens, advanced towing technology, and safety systems. Ford delivered, pioneering aluminum body construction for lighter weight, hybrid powertrains, and even all-electric models like the Lightning. And while innovation kept Ford competitive, it came at a cost. Literally, entry-level trims became harder to find. Dealers realized premium trims brought more profit, so the cheap F-150 vanished from most lots. A base price listed at $33,000? Good luck finding one on the showroom floor. By the time you added options or simply chose what was available, you were staring at $50,000, $60,000, sometimes even $80,000 price tags. Even Ford's most budget-friendly truck, the Maverick, turned into a rarity. Buyers waited months, even a year, only to watch dealerships prioritize more expensive configurations. For young workers trying to buy their first truck, Ford's promise of affordability felt like a ghost. And that's the quiet farewell. Because Ford hasn't disappeared, you'll still see thousands of them on the road. But the Ford your grandfather bought, the affordable, tough, no-nonsense pickup, that Ford has already said goodbye. And if Ford, America's most beloved truck, has drifted this far from reach, what about the rivals that always fought for the same customers? Chevrolet's bow tie badge has been a staple of American driveways since the early 1900s. Farmers, tradesmen, and families alike once turned to Chevy because it was simple, reliable, and most importantly, affordable. The iconic C and K series trucks of the 1960s brought smoother rides with coil springs while keeping their rugged utility intact. By the 1970s and 1980s, Chevrolet's square-body pickups had become cultural icons, known for boxy lines, durable mechanics, and an image of toughness that appealed to rural and urban Americans alike. For many teenagers in small towns, a used Chevy pickup was a rite of passage. For families, it was a dependable partner. Chevy wasn't flashy, it was honest. But then came the 21st century, and like Ford, Chevrolet pivoted hard. Trucks were no longer just tools. They became luxury lifestyle machines. Plush trims with leather seats, massive digital displays, and sophisticated driver assist systems took over. Entry-level trims still technically existed, usually called work truck. But in reality, dealerships rarely stocked them. Buyers walking in for a simple truck were often steered toward mid-level or premium trims with much higher profit margins. Prices told the real story. What once cost a manageable sum now pushes well past $60,000 or $70,000 for popular trims. The very brand that once symbolized blue-collar grit was pricing out the very people who had built its reputation. Fans noticed. On forums and social media, longtime Chevy loyalists began venting. Posts read things like, "The Chevy my dad drove is gone. These new ones are for rich people, not for farmers like us." Nostalgia for 70s and 80s models became so strong that classic square bodies now fetch premium prices at auctions, precisely because modern trucks feel so distant from their roots. Chevy still builds capable machines, powerful engines, diesel efficiency, off-road packages, but the affordable partner image has faded. Instead, it risks blending into its GMC sibling, straddling a line between mainstream and premium without truly being either. And that leads us directly to the next brand, because if Chevy lost its working-class soul, GMC leaned even harder into upscale territory. GMC has always carried itself with quiet confidence. For over a century, its badge represented professional grade, a promise of refinement without losing utility. Born in 1909, GMC earned its stripes building heavy-duty rigs, supplying military vehicles during World War II, and producing some of the toughest trucks of the 20th century. By the mid-20th century, GMC pickups were mechanically similar to Chevrolet, but carried upscale touches. Chrome trim, stronger engine options, and subtle design differences gave buyers a sense that GMC was the more polished sibling. For decades, that balance worked. Contractors bought GMCs to use on job sites, but also felt proud pulling up to church or community events in a truck that looked just a little more refined. But in recent decades, GMC leaned hard into that upscale image. The Denali trim, introduced in the late 1990s, exploded in popularity and became a status symbol. Suddenly, GMC wasn't just competing against Chevy, it was competing against luxury SUVs. Prices reflected the shift. By the 2020s, the average GMC Sierra sold for well over $50,000, with Denali trims climbing past $80,000. Base models? Almost impossible to find on lots. Dealers focused on premium buyers, leaving working-class customers out in the cold. The irony is painful. GMC was once the brand that blended work and polish, but in chasing luxury profits, it risks alienating the very people who once relied on it. Enthusiasts remain loyal, and the Sierra still sells in big numbers, but the identity has changed. GMC today looks more like a luxury badge than the hard-working tool it once was. And if GMC has drifted upscale, what about Ram? Its story is even more dramatic because it didn't just shift image, it redefined itself entirely. Ram's story is unique because it began as part of Dodge. The Dodge Power Wagon of the 1940s became legendary, a military workhorse turned civilian favorite. For decades, Dodge trucks were known for toughness, affordability, and individuality. Then in 1981, Dodge introduced the Ram nameplate, borrowing from its iconic ram's head hood ornament. The Ram quickly gained traction, especially after the 1994 redesign. With its semi-truck-inspired grille and muscular styling, the Dodge Ram became a cultural force. Sales boomed. Country music videos, TV commercials, and rural communities all embraced the bold new look. But in 2009, everything changed. Chrysler split Dodge and Ram during its financial crisis. Ram became a standalone truck brand, while Dodge focused on cars and SUVs. The beloved Dodge Ram name disappeared, leaving just Ram. Since then, Ram has thrived commercially. The Ram 1500 has won countless awards, praised for coil spring comfort, luxury interiors, and advanced features. But the brand's identity shifted dramatically. Entry-level trucks became rare, while high-end trims like the Rebel, Limited, and TRX skyrocketed in price, often hitting $70,000 or $80,000. Even more painful for fans, the retirement of the legendary HEMI V8. For decades, the HEMI symbolized raw American power. Its farewell felt like the closing of a chapter in truck history. Ram didn't vanish. Sales remained strong, but it transformed into something very different. The Dodge Ram of the 1980s or 1990s, with its raw muscle and affordable grit, is gone. In its place stands a polished, expensive, and refined truck aimed at a new audience. And that transformation feels like a goodbye. But while Ram still lives, another name from its history has already disappeared completely. Dodge trucks were once everywhere. For more than 100 years, the Dodge name was synonymous with toughness and blue-collar pride. From the early 1900s, light-duty trucks to the iconic Power Wagon, Dodge carried farmers, builders, and small business owners across America. The 1970s and 1980s saw Dodge pickups gain momentum, especially with the introduction of the Ram name. The 1994 redesign turned the Dodge Ram into an icon, with aggressive styling and HEMI power winning over countless buyers. Country songs referenced Rams, ads showed them conquering mountains, and millions of Americans proudly parked them in their driveways. But by 2009, the financial crisis forced Chrysler into bankruptcy and restructuring. The result? Dodge and Ram split. Ram carried the trucks, while Dodge pivoted to cars and SUVs. By 2010, no new pickup wore the Dodge badge. For truck lovers, this was heartbreaking. Decades of tradition ended quietly, without fanfare. Dodge, once a fierce competitor to Ford and Chevy, simply walked away from trucks. Today, Dodge builds muscle cars like the Challenger and SUVs like the Durango. But its pickup legacy exists only in memory, and in classic Rams still roaming the streets. Dodge didn't just fade, it vanished from the pickup world. And with it, another chapter of American truck culture closed. So there it is: Ford, Chevrolet, GMC, Ram, and Dodge. 5 names that shaped America's roads. None of them is truly dead, but each has said goodbye in its own way. Ford said goodbye to affordability. Chevrolet said goodbye to its no-nonsense workhorse identity. GMC said goodbye to accessibility. Ram said goodbye to Dodge and to the HEMI era. And Dodge itself said goodbye to trucks entirely. What remains are powerful, advanced, luxurious trucks. But for many Americans, they no longer feel like our trucks. They're status symbols, lifestyle accessories, and big business profit machines. The question now is this progress or betrayal? Do these changes represent innovation or the end of an era where every hard-working American could afford a piece of the road? One thing is clear: the spirit of the American pickup lives on, not just in dealerships, but in the memories, the nostalgia, and the stories passed down from generation to generation. Every time you fire up an old Dodge Ram or drive a classic square-body Chevy, you're keeping that spirit alive. But the future? That's still up for grabs. Will electric trucks bring prices down or push them further out of reach? Will brands remember their roots or keep chasing luxury margins? That's a conversation worth having. So if you care about the legacy, if you don't want these goodbyes to be permanent, share this story. Drop a comment below. Which brand's farewell hit you the hardest? And don't forget to subscribe, because the next chapter in America's truck story is coming fast, and you won't want to miss it.